Municipality of Anchorage's Solid Waste Services, where she works on a broad range of energy and resiliency goals for the municipality. She strives to collaborate with the many city departments, community entities, and organizations, and local businesses to foster partnerships across disciplines to leverage shared goals. And with that, I'll turn the program over to Shaina.
Hi, thank you so much, Dick, and all the folks at Alaska Common Ground. Really exciting to be here. You all always put together such great panels. Kari, are you able to launch the first poll for us? And I will then get my screen shared up.
So Shaina, this is the results of the poll that we had at the very beginning.
Oh, great. Okay, so now you're sharing the poll results. So did you know that Anchorage has a climate action plan? Oh, congratulations. This is a very engaged crew. 80% said yes, which just like makes me so happy. 6% said no, that's fine. You're gonna learn a little bit about it tonight. And then only hearing about this event, 14%, not bad at all. This is a very engaged crowd. I'm really happy to have you all on here. I wanted to introduce our panelists tonight, and then I'll introduce you to the climate action plan a little bit more. Tonight we're going to have Mike Spencer. He's the Energy Program Manager for Research and Rural Development at Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. We then have Stephen Trimble, the founder and CEO at Arctic Solar Ventures. And lastly, Chris Rose, the founder and executive director for Renewable Energy Alaska Project, or REAP. Just a reminder that we are going to have questions collected in the chat, and we'll be asking them at the end of the presentations. I will now start sharing my screen, and Kari, if you would like to launch my initial poll. There we go, perfect. Please take a minute and take the poll. This is fun, seeing the results come in. Got about almost 90 people have voted. I'm gonna wait just a few more seconds. Okay, I've got 107 votes with 23% of people saying 27% of emissions come from buildings. 52% was the winner, saying 46% of buildings generate, of our emissions are generated from buildings. 21% are saying 61% is generated from buildings, and 4% are saying 79%. So let's find out. 46% is the correct answer, which is quite a bit. Almost half of our emissions are generated from commercial, residential, all of our buildings here in Anchorage. All right, so, oh, I've got to start my timer. I'm on a time too. Okay, so Kari, are we able to take down that poll? Just a tiny bit of background about the Climate Action Plan. Anchorage passed the Climate Action Plan in May of 2019. So thank you to everyone who participated in some form in the development of that plan. This was developed with the University of Alaska. It was a real partnership between the city and the university, and took nearly a year to develop, which actually is a very short timeline in terms of climate action plans. And I was scrolling through and saw quite a few names in this in the participation here tonight who participated in it. So I just can't thank you enough. This is a fairly standard practice for communities. It's a strategic roadmap that guides our work to reduce emissions and create jobs, but also addresses how we will plan for the future and incorporate the changes that we're already seeing in our environment into our plans and actions municipal wide. There we go. So we had 7 working groups that developed that were developed to represent all 7 of these sectors that you see on your screen of the Climate Action Plan. And the University of Alaska and Alaska Pacific University faculty served as the working group leads. Municipality of Anchorage staff throughout all departments and other UAA faculty, staff and students, nonprofit representatives, and state and federal government employees made up the rest of the working group members. And overall, it was almost exactly 100 people that we had involved in the creation of the Climate Action Plan, which was really impressive. So today we will focus on the buildings and energy sector. First, I'm excited to announce that just yesterday we released the first annual report. This first report is very much qualitative. We are currently working to develop an inventory of our emissions, and I expect that next year's report will be more quantitative in nature once we get a better handle on that inventory. I hope you do have a chance to review this. There are so many accomplishments across all departments that it was actually very difficult to fit it all in. Okay, so buildings and energy. This is where my expertise and background is, and what I get really excited about. So I'm happy to be able to talk to you all about it. We always say energy efficiency first, and energy efficiency is really about using technology to do the work for us and save energy for us. So rather than saying we need to turn down the heat and put on a sweater, which is conservation, we talk a lot about implementing LED light bulb upgrades or improving insulation in our buildings in order to save money for us. We started with municipal facilities with the goal of focusing on those options that save money. We can then put those savings toward other services such as fire and education. We are working on improving efficiency in all municipal owned buildings, which is quite a fleet of buildings. And we're also then focusing on opportunities for residents and businesses. The residential and commercial sector could save approximately $80 million a year, according to a study done on energy, the energy landscape in Anchorage. So there's quite a few opportunities there. And while we're starting with actions at the municipality, you'll see even today that we're starting to move on and figure out, okay, what else can we do for our residents and our businesses here in Anchorage? Some of the things that we have done this summer is updated our building code to the 2018 IECC codes. Those are updated every 3 years. And so it's really great to see us adopt these and improve the new buildings, or improve the building stock here in Anchorage. From the CARES funding, we dedicated $2.5 million to the weatherization program through Rural Cap. So that's a program that is free, that focuses on improving the efficiency of income qualified individuals here in Anchorage. Those are local jobs that money is going to go towards. And then tons of LED lighting across the entire city. I've listed some of the trails that have been done, but all of our facilities, this is definitely standard practice now. We're updating them as fast as we can. I have a couple of announcements coming up. I'm going to talk about solar here for just a minute. But we have a $2 million solar bond coming up in the spring that you'll see on your ballot. So I really hope this is something that you can support. This project will save us over $500,000 over the life of the project. And what we did was take a look at all sorts of information, including the building structure, the roof age, any shading issues, and especially the energy use and rate for each of those buildings, and picked the top 14 buildings. A lot of fire departments, they fit really well. And in fact, you'll see here, Fire Station 10 got 9.3 kilowatts of solar last summer. And that project has done great. During 18 days last summer, they actually produced more energy than they used. and they saw a 16% reduction in electricity costs compared to the previous year. So we're really excited about that. The Egan Center's 76 kilowatt project produced nearly 80 megawatt hours of electricity. What is that? Well, it is the equivalent of about 6,300 gallons of gasoline, which avoided 123,000 pounds of carbon emissions. So we're really excited about that project. Okay, so I want to talk mostly today, check my time, about CPACE. CPACE is the commercial property assessed clean energy, which is a mouthful, or CPACE, is an innovative financing program. This enables owners of commercial and industrial properties to obtain low-cost, long-term financing for energy efficiency and renewable energy projects, and then they can pay those costs back over time through a voluntary assessment on their property tax. So the unique characteristics of PACE assessments is that the assessment is attached to the property rather than the individual. This requires very little or zero upfront out-of-pocket costs to the owner. And generally, as with other special assessments in Alaska, the assessment under a PACE program is secured by a voluntary lien on the property until it's paid back. So that's a priority lien, which makes it more stable of an investment. This supports public-private partnerships. The property works with a private lender to find their own financing. And then once they secure that, they just pay it back through the municipality assessment. Just like a property tax, then the municipality pays the lender. To date, we've got 37 states and Washington, D.C. that have enabled CPACE legislation. So this may be innovative, but it's not a new concept. Nationwide, through commercial PACE, $1.54 billion has been invested for an economic impact of $2.8 billion and 2,400 commercial projects. That's created nearly 18,000 jobs. The really cool thing about PACE right now in this downturned economy is we're actually hearing from programs in the lower 48 that people are looking more and more at PACE, and the inquiries and applications have actually increased because property owners are trying to really tighten their belt. And so by doing these projects and implementing energy efficiency and renewable energy, they are able to reduce their monthly costs. That is a bottom line improvement. So from day one, these projects can be cash flow positive. Two, developers are looking for projects. And so this helps as a part of the capital stack, make those projects happen. A benefit to this is, you might say, why would you attach it to the property? Well, maybe I'm a business owner and I don't know in 7 years if I'm going to be in this building. So why would I want to take out a loan that has a 7-year payback or a 10-year payback? This way, maybe I sell my building, this loan goes with it. So there's much less risk for it. And we're just seeing a ton of projects in the lower 48. So we're super excited about this program. We're getting it up and running. I've got a website here for the municipality, and the municipality is the first local government to get this up and running. And I'd say we're about 95% of the way there. I also want to mention that we've worked with the Alaska Energy Authority and a group of amazing people on the advisory council to help bring this project along. We've been able to get a grant to hire a consultant that has done a ton of the work for us, which has just helped a ton in getting this done as fast and efficiently as possible. Chris Rose is going to speak to the Green Bank and how that financing mechanism can actually support and work with CPACE. Real quickly, I want to talk about metrics for the climate action plan, and this is just specific to buildings and energy. We're trying to figure out what should we measure and then what can we measure. Metrics can be tricky, they can take a lot of time, but it's worth it to try to find out where we are and how we're doing. And so we're working to track dollars saved, renewable energy generated, our facilities retrofitted, what facilities have we completed, what do we have left, and then outdoor lighting converted to LEDs. So lastly, I was asked to leave you with a call to action, and my call is contact your elected officials and tell them what you, how you feel about climate action and what you would like them to prioritize. It's really great for them to hear from you, just that, you know, you want to see action on climate, no matter what it is. And then I hope you will talk to your neighbors and friends, and I hope you will support the solar bond, which is a part of a greater municipal facilities package with lots of other great energy efficiency piece components to it, this April. So that is what I have for you today as kind of an introduction. And I will move on to introducing Michael Spencer. Yes. Okay, so as a reminder, again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. Okay, Michael is up. Michael is the Energy Program Manager at Alaska Housing Finance Corporation. He has over 20 years experience working with the residential construction and energy efficiency sector. Mike assisted with the management of the energy rebate program at AHFC. So welcome. I'm going to stop sharing and we'll get Mike's slides up here.
Thank you very much, Shaina. Nice to see everybody. And thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this activity. I think I have a poll question to start with. The question is changing windows a big, emphasis big, energy efficient improvement measure? So I don't know how long we want to wait before we proceed. You guys tell me, Shaina. Sorry. Poll is closed, so we'll go on then. Right there. So 58% of people said yes, 19% said no, and 23 aren't quite sure. And I think all of the people are correct because it is somewhat of a trick question. If one was to simply look at windows and the efficiency of a window, a single pane window has an R value of a 1.1, and a triple pane window has an R value of a 3.1. Compare that to a wall that was built in the 70s or 80s, you're looking at a R11 wall, so they're not very efficient. However, when we start looking at things like air leakage, if the home was built in the 70s and 80s, we can probably guarantee that there was no insulation around those windows, and you're losing a whole bunch of air energy through air leakage around the house. So when we start talking energy efficiency, there is a series of compromises that people need to make. Oh, we're not there yet. And basically what it is, for instance, on my house, I put in bigger windows. And that was simply because my wife simply told me it's either windows or me, and what do you want? So she gets the bigger oversized windows. But the oversized windows, they do lose heat in the wintertime, but in the shoulder seasons, spring and the fall, I get solar heat gain from them. And so my heating system doesn't need to be turned on. So it's a series of compromise, and there's no single answer that somebody can, from my position right here in front of everybody, just tell you, yes, do this, yes, do that. You have to know the house and what you have there and how the pieces work together to make decisions. But in Alaska Housing, our mission is to provide Alaskans access to safe, quality, and affordable housing. Okay, Gina. So that's what drives us, and that's what's really nice about what we're doing, is that we're trying to provide knowledge for homeowners and to provide access to that safe environment. Jane, can I have the next slide, please? So I'm really appreciative that Shaina kind of went through my definitions briefly when she did hers, because it does mean different things for different people. And so for the purpose of our conversation, energy efficiency is simply using less energy to perform the same task, using it more wisely, as Shaina put it. Weatherization is the act of putting energy efficiency measures into play to make things more energy efficiency. You also have a weatherization program, but we don't want to get the two terms confused. Okay, next slide, please. So energy efficiency and weatherization started years and years ago, right? So I put on here, started the first time somebody was cold and wanted to stay warmer. That was the first time energy efficiency came up. In Alaska, however, we didn't get serious about weatherization or energy efficiency until the mid-1970s. And I have the privilege of working with Mimi, who has been basically involved in the weatherization in Alaska from that time. And she's a great wealth of information. But if we look at the next slide, we've learned a lot of things from the weatherization, and a lot of it is based on this was best practices at that time. And as time progressed, we got more and more involved in the science involved behind the measures that we did. And some of the measures that were done, we guessed right, and some of them we didn't guess right. And so we had to change the way we went about implementing energy efficiency measures. You want to click on it? I don't know why it's part this way, but typically we want to do energy efficiency for 3 reasons. And I think it's the next click, Shaina. It's for saving energy or saving money, but we've added a new category, and that's the health and the safety of the homeowner. And at HFC, our overriding goal is that health and the safety. So nothing that we ever do or recommend as far as weatherization or energy efficiency overrides the health and the safety of the people that live in there. I say here, children were a gauge of the biological indicators of a house. But with this COVID, we are now learning ourselves because we're staying in the homes for extended periods of time. But we're seeing that the kids spending all this time inside, breathing the air, constantly moving around, touching all the surfaces. If this house or a house wasn't healthy, they were the first ones to be affected by it. We're now seeing that, that this, this issue of being in the homes all the time and not having new healthy fresh air is alarming to some people, in the fact that they're realizing that their houses aren't as safe and as healthy as they should be. Next one, please. So most of us are familiar, or a lot of us are familiar with the Alaska rebate program that we had that ran approximately from 2008 to 2018. And during that time, just on the rebate side, so this is the homeowner driven side, approximately 27,000 homeowners participated in the rebate from start to end. And that resulted in a savings of approximately $261 million. And it cut people's energy costs down 34%. Next slide, please. One of the nice things about the rebate program is we were able to glean a lot of information about the housing stock before they participated in the rebate program, and what improvements they made, and what the energy efficiency value was of their home after they did the improvements. And so these are pretty much in order of what we saw happening across those 27,000 homes. Most homes had an increased air tightness. In other words, the heated air that they had in their homes was staying in their home for the comfort and the heating of that house. A lot of people installed programmable thermostats, replaced heating systems, water systems, insulated ceilings, replaced doors and windows. and added insulation and ventilation to their homes. Those are the things that we saw that happened to gain the 34% savings on energy. Next, please. So this is where I put on my safety hat. Is the health and the safety is number one priority of anybody doing work on their homes. The last thing that we want to do is to suggest somebody that they should do air sealing, for instance, on their house, and it causes an unsafe environment in their house and people get sick, or their house gets sick. So I broke down the actions from the previous sheet into two categories. I have things that it's okay for a homeowner to do and it's not going to really damage the home or potentially damage the home. And then a second list of professional actions that it's highly recommended to hire an expert or to consult an expert. One of the things that we saw in the rebate program is people may have had programmable thermostats, but they weren't programmed for anything. It used to be that you'd put them on, you'd program them, but first power outage or something, or something broke, the programming got lost and never got changed. Programming a thermostat and turning your temperature down when you're sleeping or not at home has the potential of saving you a lot of energy. Unplugging unused equipment or ghost loads. That's your computers, your game stations, your TVs, all of these things that are plugged in use energy. A few years ago, I got a call from a homeowner. He just recently got married. He married a lady who had a couple teenage kids. And he called me because his load was like 3 times, or his electric bill was 3 times higher than what he had seen as a single individual. And so we try to convince him, that, hey, well, you have 3 times the family. And he goes, I know, but I was staying at home all the time. Not much has changed. Would you come over here? Because I think the utility company has something wrong. And I said, well, we'll come over there, but we can't guarantee what we'll find. And we went over there and we looked at his house, and he had probably about a 1,500 square foot 2-story home. But when we went upstairs to the living room, we saw a game console that was stock full of iPhones and electronic devices, PlayStation, Xboxes, multiple TVs. And we did some calculation, and that unit right there alone was almost 1/3 of his electrical bill, regardless of whether it was on or off, which was very eye-opening to him. And I think a lot of people don't understand that if you have something plugged in nowadays, it's probably pulling some type of energy out of that outlet. The next item is upgrading your appliances. As you need to change an appliance out, it's good to get Energy Star appliances or appliances that use very little energy. LED lighting, replace your lighting. It doesn't mean that you have to take all your existing lights out. You can just start with, as they break or as they burn out, you replace them. Or replace broken windows and doors. Those are all things that homeowners can do that would save energy, that would not put their lives or their homes in peril. Professionals do a slightly different role. In other words, they look at how your heating system, your ventilation systems, your air, how it all interacts with each other. And they do this through diagnostic testings of air leakage, air sealing and insulation. They do replacing fans and ventilation, and they do heating systems, tune-ups and replacements as necessary. And those are all things that are highly recommended that a professional is either consulted or is hired to do, because they can definitely cause problems to the homeowners or the inhabitants. Next slide, please. One thing we have to realize is that the home is a system. You can't change one aspect of the house. In other words, let's say we're replacing the windows. And we take those windows and we seal them up, and now you don't have that air, and you're saving yourself a lot of energy. Well, perhaps your heating system required that extra airflow.
Mike, you might want to turn your camera off because you're starting to freeze up. Unless that's just me.
Okay, thank you. And then the other thing that we have is the next slide here. We'll just go to the next slide here. And so HFC is available. It has a lot of programs for energy efficiency. It has programs to help homeowners. We have the RIC library and staffing there that is able to help homeowners. I'm available with my staff here to help homeowners with questions they have with energy efficiency. Or you can talk to, like Rural Cap, like Shaina was talking about the program that they have. There's a lot of people who are experts that would be willing to help at a no charge. Next slide, please. Or is that the last one? So my call to action basically is this. It kind of goes back with that penny that you have. It doesn't matter what you're going to start with. It doesn't mean you have to start with a huge project of changing out your heating system. It could be a single light bulb. It could be pennies that you're trying to save. But anytime you do something that's going to save you some money is a first step, and you use that step and build on it, and eventually you'll become and have a more energy efficient home. Thank you.
And under time. Thank you very much, Mike. Super helpful tips that I think, a lot of us can do right away in our own home. The booklet that he shared that AHFC has done has some low cost and no cost opportunities for energy saving in your own home. So check that out. Next, we're going to have Stephen Trimble. Stephen is the founder and CEO of Alaska's largest solar company, Arctic Solar Ventures Corporation. Overseeing the direction of the company, he has worked to build a robust and sustainable industry in Alaska. Arctic Solar Ventures has brought over 2.5 megawatts of solar power online in the state. They're a member of the Inc. 500 fastest growing companies in America list, and are a globally ranked certified B corporation. Stephen enjoys time outdoors with his wife and 2 young sons. So thank you, Stephen. We'll get your poll launched and your slides up.
Thanks, Shaina. I am going to share my screen here and get us going. Let's see here. Having a little trouble sharing my screen, so I'm going to go ahead and carry on. Solar energy has come a long way in a short time span in Alaska, but we're just getting started. Since 2016, we've grown 287% per year, but we have a lot further to go. Our federal government has now placed climate policy at the center of our future by making it economic policy. By renewing consumer tax credits, introducing economic stimulus, and providing dedicated resources to address climate change, we are reaffirming our global position in the new economy. Anchorage has stepped up with the creation of its own plan, and now it's up to all of us to realize that opportunity. We must use this time wisely to create equitable policies. The state has tremendous potential, but we need lawmakers who will focus on a comprehensive statewide energy policy where one currently does not exist. We need leadership in a time of change. Despite this, we have grown, proving that we can adapt clean technologies to our environment that provide benefit to both our economy and society. But still, we can do more. We've introduced low interest financing, but we need more people to know that it exists. We've placed our government in a position for success, but we need to not lose sight of our shared goals. Likewise, we've brought solar into our classrooms, into the hearts of our children to know it's possible. We've brought these things, but we can still do more. We must have equitable access to energy. Our industry is patriarchal and predominantly white. We must uplift this opportunity to those that have been historically left behind. It's our responsibility to do so. We must decide, are we a people that look to our past for an invitation to our future? Or are we a land of hope, compassion, and mutual success? Our state motto is North to the Future. Let's decide to live that now. Thank you.
Stephen, did you have the answer, the correct answer? Did you see the poll? And do you have the
I
correct
did. So
answer?
polling question was, what is the average amount of solar electricity that, or electricity that's provided by a home that has solar on it in Anchorage? And the answer is 75%, which usually surprises people.
Looks like only 8% of the poll takers got that right.
Stephen, is that year round?
Yeah, it is.
I got that one wrong. Thank you. Okay. I guess you stumped quite a few of us. So now I'd like to introduce Chris Rose. Chris is the founder and executive director of Renewable Energy Alaska Project, or REAP, a statewide nonprofit coalition of diverse energy businesses, utilities, and organizations working to increase the development of renewable energy and promote energy efficiency across Alaska. REAP has been instrumental in helping establish and fund clean energy programs and projects across Alaska, including the creation of the state's Renewable Energy Fund in 2008, the Emerging Energy Technology Fund in 2010, commercial property assessed clean energy legislation in 2017, and the formation of the Rail Belt's first regional electric reliability organization in 2020. Before establishing REAP in 2004, Mr. Rose had a private law practice for over a decade that included work in remote Northwest Arctic villages and the mediation of a variety of disputes around the state. He's written a monthly opinion column for the Anchorage Daily News and served on various statewide boards and committees. Chris lives 65 miles northeast of Anchorage, where he and his partner grow flowers and food on a small farm. In his free time, he loves to cook, walk in the Alaska wilderness, and visit ancient cultures around the world. Chris, we have a question for you, and then we can go ahead and kick off your presentation.
Okay, thanks, Shaina. Okay, you want to call the question?
Looks like we're to give it maybe another couple of seconds. Who can benefit from the affordable loan programs and products that green banks design and market? Got about 75% of voters in with a pretty steady answer here.
Okay. Well, we're still ahead of schedule, so we've got plenty of time. Okay, I see 93% of the people got this question right, which is great. It's all of the above. And hopefully as I go through my presentation, you'll see why the answer is all of the above. So thanks a lot, Shaina, and thanks to Kari for organizing this and everyone else at Alaska Common Ground. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. And it's great to have a climate action plan at the city level, at the municipal level. Many of you know that the state has attempted to put together a plan a couple of different times, both under Governor Walker and Governor Palin. And we still don't have a plan at the state level that we really need to encompass all the things that we're talking about here tonight. But the municipality is a huge chunk of the state, and it's very exciting that there's so much activity going on in Anchorage. So I congratulate Shaina and the rest of her colleagues. I'm going to talk about a green bank for Alaska tonight. First, I'll just tell you a little bit about REAP. We're a statewide nonprofit. We're composed of a diverse coalition of a bunch of different kinds of stakeholders, businesses, utilities, native corporations, developers, education institutions, NGOs. And our mission is simply to increase renewable energy development and promote energy efficiency across the state of Alaska. We have multiple education programs and activities. Besides the advocacy we do, many of you may be familiar with some of the K through 12 STEM education we do, including disseminating AK Energy Smart and Win for Schools. We're also involved in holistic community development down in Southeast Alaska with the Sustainable Southeast Partnership, and working on a number of different other programs for state and federal agencies to promote renewables. I've also been doing a lot of advocacy since 2004. You heard Mike Spencer talk a little bit about the money and the savings that have come from the weatherization and the rebate programs that HFC has administered since 2008 and actually before that, but there's been a huge amount of activity since 2008. We promoted the idea of appropriations to those programs and just recently have been successful in getting a bill passed in March of last year to create the first ever regional organization for the rail belt for electricity, which we hope will result in a lot of benefits for Anchorage and beyond. Why don't we go to the first slide here? I know, Kara, you are, I should be telling you to move through these slides. Okay, thanks. This is one way that we try to put energy efficiency. We have estimated, and we are willing to accept other numbers if people can come up with them. But part of the problem is coming up with these numbers. But we have estimated that Alaskans collectively every year spend $5 billion on energy. That's all of us together on transportation, electricity, and heat. That's a lot of money. And we are further estimating, and we think conservatively, that if we were able to save 20% of that energy every year through all kinds of measures in transportation, electricity, and heating, then we could save $1 billion. Now, $1 billion is no chump change. It's a ton of money for our economy. It would be able to be reproduced in the economy and have multiple effects on all kinds of other businesses. And we just think this is straightforward and an easy thing for us to be considering. It's really hard for anyone to be arguing that Alaska couldn't or shouldn't be the most energy efficient place on the planet. And this is one way we look at it. We're just essentially throwing $1 billion down into that fire every year. We also call efficiency the first fuel. We want to make sure that people understand that it's a resource. Oftentimes when people talk to us, they're very excited about renewable energy resources, which makes a ton of sense. but efficiency is a resource. And so that's what we call it the first fuel. We really want to make sure that we're just not wasting any of it. We're paying for it in the first place. Let's not waste it. Next, please. This is just a slide about some of the HFC programs we talked about. Mike mentioned over 27,000 homes in the rebate program. There was another 23,000 plus homes in the weatherization program. So more than 50,000 homes got retrofitted in about a 12, 13-year period. Average savings over 30%. And the average annual fuel savings, if you put that all together, is more than 25 million gallons of diesel fuel equivalent every year. $640 million was appropriated for that program, for those two programs. And unfortunately, with the fiscal situation the state has right now, we're never going to see that kind of appropriation from the state, at least not in the near future, for these kinds of programs. And that's one of the reasons that we'll be talking about a green bank here in a second. Next, please. This is another great example of just what can be done. Most folks know about the Cold Climate Housing Research Center, CCHRC. This is a prototype home that CCHRC built in Quinnahock, Alaska, in the YK Delta. Average house in Quinnahock uses about 1,000 gallons of heating oil every year. This home, 180 gallons. So we can see what can be done. That's a tremendous savings, over 80% savings. CCHRC thinks these homes can be built for roughly the same cost per square foot as the homes that exist. So clearly we have an opportunity to save a lot of energy. Next, please. The grant fund that was talked about, the Renewable Energy Grant Fund, was passed in 2008. The state's put over $270 million into that program. And what's really important is the leverage on that. More than $200 million has been leveraged from federal and private monies. And now almost about 80 projects have been developed, mostly in rural Alaska. They're annually displacing the equivalent of about 30 million gallons of diesel every year. Again, we're not going to see this kind of ability for the state to put this kind of money into a grant program in the near future. So this is another reason why we might want to be considering other financing options. Next, please. So if we're not going to get grant money, which has fueled a lot of what's gone on with efficiency and renewables in the state over the last 10 or 15 years, how are we going to do it? And we have been for the last 3 or 4 years, actually about 4 years now, been focused on the idea of a green bank. But first, I guess we have to ask the question, why can't just the banks do it now? I mean, there's all kinds of banks out there. Why aren't they going to finance clean energy? And here are 4 important reasons why you can't just walk up to your local bank or credit union and say, please give me an affordable loan to retrofit my house or put solar on the top of my house. First of all, there's a relatively short track record for clean energy financing. One of the ways I like to put it is you couldn't get a car loan the day cars were invented. Banks had to figure out how cars worked and what the risk was involved in loaning on a car, and you just couldn't get a loan right away. So clean energy is maturing, but it's still a relatively immature market for banks. The second reason is that a lot of these projects, we're talking about home projects, they're relatively small and distributed. They're disaggregated all over the place. So a bank may look at the $10 or $20 or $50,000 loan that you want and say, for at least to them, that's a pretty small loan. They're just not going to deal with it, especially when those loans are spread out all over the place. It's just not worth their time. Another reason is that the capital market for these kinds of loans just doesn't really exist yet. If you take a home loan, a mortgage, you're likely to get a letter in the mail soon after from your mortgage company saying, we've sold your loan. So there's a secondary market for home loans. There's a secondary market for car loans. There's no secondary market for clean energy loans right now. Green banks are working to do that. And I guess the final reason that it's worth mentioning here is just inertia. People do what they know. They don't necessarily want to go out of the way to learn something new. And this is the 4th reason why private financing is lacking for clean energy. Next, please. So what's a green bank? First of all, a green bank is typically an entity that has a relationship with the government. It could be a quasi-governmental institution. More and more, we're seeing nonprofit green banks sprout up. But one of the really important things to think of is that there's a focus on commercial technology. So green banks are not going to give loans for risky technologies or emerging technologies. They're giving loans for things that we know actually have a payback, like a new boiler or more insulation in your attic. Things like that are very, very easy to track to see what kind of savings you're going to get. There's usually some kind of a dedicated source of capital for the green bank. One of the banks we've been working with closely is the Connecticut Green Bank. And in Connecticut, there's a system benefit charge in everyone's electric bill. It's not very much. No one really notices it. It's about a tenth of a cent for every kilowatt hour you buy. But collectively in Connecticut, that winds up to be about $37 million a year for the Connecticut Green Bank. So that's one way you can finance a green bank. Another element of a green bank is you focus on leverage. The idea is not for the green bank to be spending a ton of its money to invest in loans, but rather to design loan programs and products that the private sector is going to be excited to get in on. So you're going to leverage the small amount of money that the government puts up with private sector money. Next, please. If you don't remember anything about a green bank except this slide, I'd be happy. This is really what it boils down to. I can't emphasize this first point enough. A green bank is not so much a bank that's going to give out a lot of state money. Its first function really is to design the loans. How are you going to design the loan so that it's attractive and you de-risk the amount of exposure for your private sector partners? So for instance, one of the designs is going to be get a lower interest rate. You can negotiate with the banks and say, look, if you lower the interest rate on these kinds of loans and also give people more time to pay it back, we will let you into our program. And guess what you get? Even though you're getting less money on your interest rate, you're going to get a lot more volume, because as people funnel through our program, our green bank program, you're going to get a lot of volume for these loans. That in and of itself also de-risks the loan even further, because if a person has more time to pay and has a lot less interest rate than they would have gotten at a commercial bank, then they could actually wind up with a loan that is saving them more money every month than they're paying back. A cash flow positive loan, which is a pretty unrisky loan. The next most important thing a green bank does is educate the private banks on the opportunity. So as a green bank designs these loan products and programs, it's going out to the banks and engaging the banks and explaining to them, look, we will, the public sector, we will take on this risk of designing and even marketing these loan programs. That'll cost the public sector money. It's something you don't want to put any money into, but we want you to put investments into these loans. If we do all the hard upfront work of designing these programs and marketing them, and that education is really important. The third point here is marketing. I mentioned that already, but if you have a great product and you don't tell anybody about it, guess what happens? Nobody uses it, and it's a failed program. So marketing is really, really important, and it's one of the major things that a green bank does. And finally, like I mentioned before, it's leverage. So you want to leverage private sector investment capital. The Connecticut Green Bank, which I mentioned before, has been around since 2010. It's the first green bank in the country. Their average leverage ratio right now is 8-to-1. That means for every dollar the Connecticut Green Bank puts into one of their investments, into one of their loans, they're getting $8 from the private sector into those loans. So they're putting in just a fraction of the money, and most of the money is coming from private sector banks. Next, please. Here is a slide from the Connecticut Green Bank that just kind of shows a graphic way, some of the ways that a green bank leverages the public capital to get more private sector investment. So the first one there on the left is co-investment. So it's possible that private capital and the green bank could both put money into a project. So that's simple, co-investment. More often, what happens is a green bank does this middle thing called credit support. Really, what they may do there is offer a credit enhancement. Sometimes that means just simply giving the banks some sense that if they do have a loss, that they're going to be covered. So things like a loan loss reserve fund is a very common thing. Connecticut Green Bank has a very successful program where all they did was set up a fund in escrow, and they call it a loan loss reserve fund. And they said, banks, you can put most of the money in. We're pretty confident that there's not going to be any defaults, but if there is, a certain percentage of your loss is going to be covered by this loan enhancement that we've put out there. So that attracts a lot of private sector investment. And the third thing, the warehousing, that's really just all about developing that secondary market for clean energy financing loans. Like I said, there hasn't been a long history of a secondary market for clean finance loans, but Connecticut's begun to do that. They've already sold off a couple tranches of loans that they from their portfolio over the last 10 years. So they've been able to start developing a secondary market for these kinds of loans. Next, please. This is one of my favorite loan products that the Connecticut Green Bank has, and it's called Smarty Loan. It's essentially a residential loan product, and it provides in Connecticut the kind of money that the AHFC programs provided, only it's a loan. It's not a grant. But you can see that the rates range from 2.99 to 6.99%. That's a pretty good interest rate. And you also have pretty flexible terms in terms of how long you have to pay it back. So if you get a 3% loan and you have 12 years to pay it back, depending on how much you have borrowed and what you actually put in for an energy efficiency improvement, you could easily see a cash flow positive loan where you're actually saving more money every month on your energy bills than you're paying back on the loan. There's a lot of different things that residential consumers in Connecticut can do with these loans. You can see the list there: boilers, furnaces, heat pumps, rooftop solar, EV chargers, easy application. You can get up to a $40,000 loan online under this program in Connecticut. So it's a fantastic program. It's the kind of thing we'd love to see in Alaska at some point. Next, please. Lots of green banks so far, besides Connecticut. New York has got a big green bank, and you can see the rest. Nevada and Colorado are relatively recent. They're both nonprofit green banks, and there are green banks starting up in many countries around the world as well. Next, please. So a green bank for Alaska. As I said, we've been working on this idea for about 4 years. We have had people from the Coalition for Green Capital in New York, which is a major nonprofit that's been helping some of those green banks around the country get developed. We've been working with the Connecticut Green Bank. We've done a lot of education in the previous administration and in this administration. We've done education in the legislature. And over about the last 18 months, had a lot of traction, I think, at the municipal level. The Coalition for Green Capital did a market opportunity study for the municipality of Anchorage on what a municipal green bank would look like. And the 3 top markets that report identified were CPACE, residential efficiency and weatherization, and rooftop solar. So you heard Shaina talk earlier about CPACE and how those loans are actually being underwritten by local banks. Well, another opportunity would be a green bank. So if there was a green bank in either the municipality or the state level, that would be another bank that could easily stand behind those loans that municipalities are giving out. And that may well be a very good possibility for some of the smaller municipalities besides Anchorage, where there may not be as many banks in Fairbanks or the Kenai or Juneau that may want to be part of a CPACE program. In other states, including Connecticut, a green bank plays a large role in supporting CPACE programs. I mentioned the residential energy efficiency program in Connecticut just a minute ago. That's a kind of program that a green bank could develop in Alaska. And rooftop solar. And under my own experience, and I know that we heard from Stephen, he's got some great low-cost financing, but a lot of folks can't access that. In my own experience, when I was looking at a solar project for my own home, and I have good credit, I was going to my credit union, and they were saying, "Yeah, sure, we'll give you a loan, but it'll be 8-9%." 8-9% for solar doesn't make a lot of sense if you can get a 4 or 5% loan through a green bank or through some other financing. So these are the markets that we think initially a green bank could serve. Eventually, if a green bank is successful, they might be able to to service generation projects, particularly in rural Alaska. Next, please. I want to mention this because it's important. Right now, there is legislation at the federal level. It's called the Clean Energy and Sustainability Accelerator. It's been called a few different things. It was first introduced in the Senate in the summer of 2019 as a national climate bank, but it's essentially a federal green bank. And the reason this is important is two or threefold. First of all, it would provide funding for green banks around the country. That's the third point there. A majority of the dollars, and right now the bill would appropriate $100 billion. A vast majority of those dollars would run through a network of state and local green banks, including for operations. And that's been one of the big nuts to crack in trying to develop a green bank, either at the municipal or state level, is these green banks don't necessarily pay for themselves in the first 4 or 5 years. They got to get up and running before they get a portfolio that's big enough where they're, the interest that they're charging on the loan starts to pay for the staff that they've got. This federal green bank could support the operations of local and state green banks. It would essentially act as a national green bank, but it would be a nonprofit. And importantly for Alaska, 40% of the investment would go to disadvantaged communities facing climate impact. So Alaska might get even a disproportionate share of that $100 billion. This bill could have traction. It's passed the House of Representatives twice since July. It's never had a hearing in the Senate. And our understanding is that its sponsors are going to introduce it next week in the Senate. So that'll be the first hearing in the Senate. It's in Biden's platform. We are really hoping that our congressional delegation will support this because it would have a direct benefit for our efforts for a green bank in the state of Alaska. Next, please. This is my last slide, I think. We have a lot of policy challenges here. You've heard a lot from other folks tonight, but energy efficiency has just got to be our first objective. It's really easy to talk about renewable energy projects. They're very cool. I love to talk about them too, but energy efficiency is our first resource. It should be our first objective. We should be the most energy efficient place on the planet. The next thing you've heard from other folks as well, we need binding policy, not just programs. REAP's been instrumental in trying to get programs established here in the state. We've been successful, but we need real policy. We need binding mandates to get where we're going. This third point, focus on public-private partnerships. That's what a green bank is. The public green bank works with the private sector banks, and it's a great partnership because the banks are essentially getting into a new field of lending. We really have to work on education and workforce development. The way we see it at REAP, we've got technology, and technology is really, really good these days. But if you don't have people and money and policy, it's not going to work. And investing in education and workforce development is key for operations and maintenance of any of these projects. And finally, we need to align the programs we already got, subsidies and other long-term state goals. Right now, there's just no alignment, and we have an opportunity to do that. So I think that's it. And our call to action is for you to write both Governor Dunleavy and our congressional delegation in supporting the establishment of a green bank. We'd love to see a statewide green bank. We've been talking to the administration recently about the possibility of a statewide green bank. I think if the governor began to hear from constituents, there'd be a possibility we develop something. And then we'd have a vehicle that could receive that federal green bank money that I'm talking about. But that's only going to happen if we get bipartisan support in the Senate. We will pass this thing in the House again. The Senate's the key. Folks like Senator Murkowski and Senator Sullivan can really push us over the edge and get this $100 billion federal green bank going if we just get a few Republicans on board. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. Yeah, I really hope that we can see movement on that federal green bank. That would be amazing. And I liked how you put it and kind of compared a car loan to like a clean energy loan. I can easily get a car loan at like 3.5%, and the banks are very comfortable with that. but I can't get a loan for, you know, solar, even though it pays back. So it's kind of backwards.
Right. It doesn't depreciate the day you drive it off the lot.
Right.
Makes your house worth more.
So as a reminder, questions in the chat, please. And I'm going to try to moderate this. There's a lot of great questions in the chat. Some of them have already been answered. And so I might skip over some. And if you have burning questions, we can always follow up afterwards and answer them, because we won't have time to answer all of these great questions. I wanted to focus on the opportunities, whether it's subsidies, whether it's a program that we have available, because I'm seeing a lot of questions about what those are. And so I'll start with a question for Mike. And somebody was wondering, is the home energy rebate or weatherization program still available?
No, that program is not available at this moment. That was a grant that was given to us through the state government, and that is no longer available or up and running.
And how about weatherization?
Oh, sorry about that.
Oh, I asked about both.
I would put them both together. No, weatherization is still there. Funding has been cut, so they're doing the best that they can with the resources that they have from the state level.
And on that same vein of programs that are in place that support this, this question is for Stephen about solar net metering. There was some back and forth about how the utilities true up net metering and what that means for the solar project. Are you able to kind of briefly explain what net metering is and what that looks like, and how we do it in Anchorage and Alaska?
Sure, absolutely, Shaina. And so as it has been mentioned a couple times, net metering policy differs from state to state because it's set by the local state regulatory bodies. It's gone through a lot of different iterations. It's being replaced by other policies in some of the states that have had it longer. Right now, our net metering policy is one of what's called the sort of monthly true up. In practice, it's actually a bit of a hybrid system. So what happens is that you generate solar in a given month, and so we're talking about a billing period. At the end of that month, if you have a remainder, you keep that remainder as a form of credit. Whatever you have not used within the same month changes in value. So this is where it's a little different than just true monthly net metering, which would be anything you have left over at the end of the, you're given credit for what you produce during the month, and then none of it carries over. But what happens here is that at the end of the month, the value of that credit changes from the utilities retail rate, which is what we pay as ratepayers, to their cost of power. So it's roughly, I'd say roughly a third of the value. And so as you're generating solar throughout the month and you're using it, you're maximizing its value. And so it doesn't really pay to over generate too much in that sense, in that as you would accumulate these credits, they would not expire, but they slowly lose value over time.
Thanks, I was muted. So ideally you want to size your system so that you're using a lot of it in your home.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. I like to use my own house as an example a lot. And so as a matter of concept, we decided to make our house 100% net solar home for the year. In Anchorage, we've done probably about 20 or so homes that have reached that 100% capacity, and how can you do that in Anchorage when we have a winter? And it's through net metering. And so, for instance, we get 100% of our net electricity from solar throughout when you factor in the whole course of the year. So there's some months where you're making more, and there's some months where you're making less. And net metering helps to balance that out. You can never quite achieve a true $0 bill because utilities have fees, which don't necessarily get accounted for through net metering. But we have a power bill in January and half of February. That's it.
That sounds pretty great. And then since I've got you, Stephen, on subsidies and programs that could help, can you talk about the federal tax credit program and how that's changed recently?
Sure. The federal tax credit was slated to begin to step down after this year. We worked with Senator Murkowski's office actually extensively to get that incorporated in her Energy Act of 2020. We tried a couple different vehicles to find that, give that extension a home, but it was always blocked by the executive branch. So that was the way we finally got it through. So what it does is it covers a percentage of the cost in the term of a tax credit that you get back after you've spent the money. And it's 26% of the total cost. So it's a consumer incentive, which is great. You basically are eligible for it in the tax year that you finished having solar completed on your house. And so right off the bat, within the first year, you recuperate 26% of your cost. It was extended for another 2 years. And we're currently working with the new administration to see if we can extend that longer. But it's a great incentive. A lot of times states and or municipalities will stack additional incentives on top of that. And there's a lot of, again, like with net metering, there's a lot of different examples of what other states have been successful and not successful doing in trying to provide local incentives for solar.
Well, that's exciting. Thanks. So this question is kind of interesting, and I don't have an answer for it, but I'm going to throw it out here. If a majority of homeowners in Anchorage increased the energy efficiency of their homes, how much could that reduce the 46% of emissions that the building industry is responsible for? I like the question. I can't answer it. Does anybody have any shot at that? I just haven't done the math on it.
Well, Shaina, if the rebate program was saving 34%, mostly heat, right? Mostly heat. That's a third of someone's bill. Theoretically, it could be a third of 46%. So it could knock it down to 30%.
Well, and the Anchorage Energy Landscape and Opportunities Analysis, I believe said across the board, really, we have an opportunity for 20% savings on all buildings with energy efficiency, plus 5% for operations and maintenance. And for an example, the municipality used to have a person that their only job was to change light bulbs. That was their job. And now with all of the LEDs we're putting in, they don't need to do that anymore. So that's pretty exciting. Okay, let's see. So I wanted to ask a question for all the panelists. With the Biden administration really focusing on climate change and climate action and environmental justice, there were quite a few executive orders yesterday focused at climate during Climate Day. And I'm wondering what sort of opportunities you see for this administration, or what your big, hairy, audacious hopes are for the administration to improve clean energy in Alaska. And I'm putting that out to all of our panelists.
Well, Shane, I'll go first. I think that there's a lot that's going to happen. To me, it's still a little bit unclear just how far this administration can or will go. But I would even point to a statement made by General Motors today that they're no longer going to make internal combustion engines past 2035. That in confluence with a lot of what we're hearing from the Biden administration on electric vehicles. So a huge chunk of our energy use is transportation. And so electric vehicles are just going to happen for both market and political forces. And I think that's one of the big opportunities for Alaska, particularly Anchorage. It comes with some barriers and issues that we're dealing with, but it's a big opportunity.
Yeah, a lot of the details are still to be sorted out. Hopefully we'll see some additional consumer incentives and/or, a longer commitment to those incentives. Hopefully they'll be a certain amount of infrastructure spending that'll focus on clean energy production as well. There'll be other incentives that we don't yet know about or haven't been able to figure out. There's been a lot of discussion as to how the new administration is going to interface with industry to start tackling some of these problems, directly. And they seem pretty receptive in that regard to setting up types of advisory groups where they can bring business and government together to start to figure some of these things out. So a lot remains to be seen, but the commitment is there, and it's up to us to take advantage of the opportunity.
Thank you. And Michael, if I could give you like 30 seconds so we can.
I was waiting to see how I could tie it. So I'm going to be non-political in this fact, simply because of my position here. But the nice thing is the fact that regardless of what any administration does, energy efficiency can happen. Homeowners can do things on their own without having to wait for a program or funding or something like this. They can start out right now at their home with their programmable thermostat. So that's my parting words.
I love those parting words. That was perfect. So Kari, if you could put up all of the calls to action that we had tonight as a reminder. We hope that you got something out of this and that you will take some of these actions, if not all of them, to heart. We had some really great ones. We hope that you will reach out to your legislators. Oh, great, they're all up there. So I'll leave you to read that, and then I'm going to turn it back over to our chair, Dick. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And thank you, Shaina, Mike, Stephen, and Chris for a very interesting and informative discussion tonight. Missing from this Zoom event is the sound of applause that everyone watching tonight would like to give you. Special thanks to Kari Gardy, who has been running the Zoom show this evening, along with Betsy Baker, monitoring the chat, and technical assistance from Katie Doherty and Stacia McGordy. This event has been organized by co-chairs Kari Gardy and Mary Lou Harrell, who chaired a subcommittee at Alaska Common Ground, with an awesome committee, including board member Peg Tileston and board members, or not board members, but Common Ground members, Gretchen Nelson, Kemi Dalton, Betsy Baker, and Shara Sutherland, and Chanel Afghan from the Alaska Center. So thank you to all of them. Thank you for your support in attending this event tonight. If you are not a member, please go to our website, alaskacommonground.org, all small letters, to join or make a donation to support Alaska Common Ground's work towards an engaged Alaska democracy. And remember to join us Thursday, February 25th, as we discuss how land use and transportation decisions can help us meet our climate action goals in Anchorage. And then also remember those events on the last Thursday of both March and April as well. So thank you again for participating tonight. Please stay healthy, stay engaged, and have a good evening.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.